In a figurative sense, our lives go through certain periods of time where aspects of our lives are torn down, or we mourn, or certain things die. Okay, so, this is in contrast, right? So you kind of see, in a sense, you might say positive things happening and negative things happening, right? So on the one hand, you have these positive things happening. Birth, building, laughing, dancing. Okay, now is that what you'd like your life to be entirely composed of? I do. I'd like that. Okay, so we'd like to avoid the other side, right? You're on the bad side. Okay, you'd like to avoid the bad side. I mean, we want to avoid the deaths, the mourning, the crying. We want to keep those away from our lives, but to avoid having to tear down and to be sick. But what Ecclesiastes is saying is these are both important. That what we think of the positive and what we think of the negative are both times of life and important ones, and it's important that when those seasons come, we recognize them and respond to them in a way that's really healthy for us and for others. They're both important. And so in a figurative sense, there are seasons of life which are deaths. I mean, physical deaths of people for sure. But our pets die. Our job might die if we lose that. A marriage may die. Family relationships may die. But in a figurative sense, also those things to be gained. You can gain a new child. You can gain a young person who's like a child to you, or an old person who's like a father or mother to you. You can build a career, build a family. You can build a residence, or conversely, lose a residence, lose a job, have an empty nest. You can be healed, but also become ill in different ways. In short term, in a cold, or in the long term, in some kind of disability. These are the seasons of life that we go through. And those are in every area of our lives, They are in areas of our life from personal things that you might experience and few people or no people know about. These seasons of life happens in our spiritual life or church life, in which things are built up or received. They happen in our family life. Some of these are short term. You might have a disease that just lasts for a week. Or you might have a kind of disability, I have a surgery or whatever, and so you have that season of life where for 2 months you just can't do what you used to do. Your life changes. That's a short season. We'd call that a bad season in a sense. But then we have also long seasons of life. Long childhood or a long adulthood that would last for perhaps a few decades. And so those seasons of life can be very long, a chronic illness instead of one that passes. We have these seasons of life, and they can happen at the same time, in a sense. I mean, you might be in a long season of life, like building a home and a family, and yet have a short season of pain, a surgery or a disability. And so those things can come together. And they're worse, in a sense, when they compound at times. But it's good to recognize the season you're in. Okay, now here's the night sky as seen from the city. What do you notice about it?
It's not ours.
There's like nothing in the sky. I mean, that's what you notice, right? I mean, there's so many lights, there's so much smog that you can't actually see the stars. And so, if you pay attention to the stars, I know when it's winter when Orion is out. But if I can't see Orion, how do I know it's winter? So in certain places, it's hard to recognize the season you're in. And this is also true in our lives. We need to recognize that as we go through life, the seasons of life change. Sometimes short, sometimes long. You need to recognize that and pay attention to that. And it's good to pay attention to what's going on in yourself. I know I'll get periods of time when I just feel like listless, like no energy, and I'll think, this means I'm in a season of loss. And I'll think, what have I lost recently? It might be someone leaving the church, It might be I try to reconnect with a friend and he doesn't connect with me. Okay, so I think, okay, I'm in this season of loss and I need to pay attention to that and do the right thing in that season. Now, there are long seasons of life, so you might picture spring and summer in your life is childhood, young adulthood, towards the middle age. And in the spring and summer of life, it's a lot of fun because you're building and adding, you're gaining. You're gaining and building a career. Maybe you're gaining a husband or wife, gaining some children, gaining some recognition in your career. Okay, so you're building there. It's the first 2/3 of life, I'd say. But then there's the last third of life, which is getting into fall and winter. And then it's mostly losses. Children are moving out, perhaps having problems of their own, and that weighs you down. You're losing an occupation when you retire, losing energy and health. That's like the last third of life or so. There are some little surprise seasons. Anyone know what Indian summer is? It can be in the dead of winter. Okay, but a day will come when the sun comes out and the warmth comes out, and that's a little shock of life in the dark season. But on the whole, there's these long life cycle seasons. Okay, so you need to find the good in those seasons, because even in seasons where there's loss, there's things to gain or to benefit from. Okay, here's some clouds. Are clouds light or dark? Clouds are usually light and dark, to different degrees, depending on the weather. At certain times, a cloud is mostly dark, and there are bright parts of that, especially in the setting sun or after a rain. Other types, like this, are mostly light, you know. But there are both of those in there, if you're there to see them. And so our seasons of life are that way in the sense that there are, in every season, bright spots in that and dark spots. And especially in the darker seasons, we need to recognize the lighter parts that are there as well. Okay, so I mentioned the first part of Ecclesiastes 3, and most of it was about things that happened to you, that is, deaths, births, and so forth. It goes on and talks a little bit more, and here the focus is, I think, a little bit more on what we do, our task in these seasons, not just what happens to us. Chapter 3 continues. There's a time to scatter stones, and a time to gather, a time to embrace, and also a time to refrain, a time to search, and a time to give up, a time to keep, and a time to throw away, a time to tear, and a time to mend, a time to be silent, and a time to speak, a time to love, and a time to hate, a time for war, and a time for peace. Now, you need to find what season we're in. You know, there are easier seasons where there's a lot of planting, harvesting, newness, humor, games. And then there are harder seasons in which there's more losses, being uprooted, knocked down, giving up, withheld, having more losses. And both of those are important. And you need to find what season you're in as you think about what's going on in your life, and perhaps talk through it with others. And it's especially difficult to find your season if you're in transition. But if you find those things, you will find some losses in those seasons, but you also find opportunities no matter what. Okay, so I want to talk about 2 seasons of life, and I'm going to talk roughly about the first 2/3 and the back 2/3. In the spring and summer, you might say that's the young adult part of life. And that's, you know, the teens and the young adults, okay. And the power, there's a special power that comes with being a teen or a young adult. A special power. In that you have unique time to make a choice between being Batman or Poison Ivy. Okay? Being a productive person or a destructive person. This is what you decide when you're a young adult and a teenager. Now, these characters have superpowers. Okay, and as a young adult, you have a superpower. Your superpower as a young adult is you have the ability to wreck your life for your entire life. Okay? And I'm not even exaggerating this. If you're in your teens or your 20s, right now, you can do something that will wreck your life like forever. Dig yourself a hole so deep, you'll either never get out or only get out part way. This is your superpower as a young person, because you're making choices along those lines. You know, at graduations of high school, they tell you what? You have the power to change the world. So, what they should do is add to that and say, you have the power to wreck your life, and some of you are doing it already. That's what they should say. It's true though, okay? Because when you're a teenager or a young adult, you are choosing whether to be a drinker or not be a drinker. You're choosing whether to experiment with drugs or not do that. You're choosing your friends. And your friends are you going to build up your life and your spiritual life, or they're going to destroy it. One or two. One or the other. You're choosing those people who are going to be that. Because to a great extent, our friends we make when we're young stay with us for a very long time of our whole life. And who you choose wrecks your life or builds it. It's a unique time. If you're choosing to be sexually active outside of marriage, this is a higher risk. And the more parts you have, the more partners you have, the more you're going to wreck your life in the future. These things follow you. If you're choosing, especially as a young person, to make yourself the Lord of your life or Christ the Lord of your life, this is the critical time where you're making that choice. Okay? So as a young adult, this is your unique superpower. You can wreck your life. Okay, now how many people wake up in the morning and say, here you are, age 18. I'm going to wreck my life today. How many people do that? No. Okay, usually people wreck their life by baby steps. They decide to be with this person, or to do this, or to drink that, or not do this, or not do that. So it's like walking down a path, right? I mean, you don't usually like hurdle, and suddenly you're in a different place. It takes a step at a time, and people wreck their lives mostly a step at a time. So you're making the 20 choices you make today will wreck your life or build it. This is your superpower as a young person. Okay, now what about you old folks? You old folks? Nobody admits to being old. You notice that? Nobody admits to being. Okay, 2 people admit to being old. All right? Or just you.
I admit it.
You can usually tell by the color of the hair or the black of it, right? Okay, so in old age, this is the problem with old age, last third of life, is there are a lot more losses than gains. And this is the sad thing about growing older. A lot more losses than gains. So your children move out or move a long distance away. And that's grief for you. You lose to death some of your friends, perhaps your husband or wife. This is a loss, a deep loss. You lose a career, maybe you get fired or downsized, when you're older, or eventually you retire, and you lose the career, and you lose the affirmation, or friends, especially friends, that come with having a job. And so older age, you also lose energy. You become sick more often, okay? This is what happens with old age. There's more losses than gains. This is what winter is like. So you can see this as, I don't know, is it a dead end or is it a destination? You can see that either way. Is old age just an accident or a goal? It can be a dead end. That is for some people. But it can also be a destination. Okay, I got a picture of a guy for you here. Any baseball fans? Who is this guy? Major League Baseball player. He's got a Braves uniform on here. Who is this guy? Anyone recognize him? He's in the Hall of Fame, but who is he? Come on, somebody knows this. Somebody knew at the first service. This is Phil Negro. He's unique. Now you notice the gray hair. I put the arrow of the gray hair there so you can see this. Okay. What is this guy doing playing Major League Baseball with gray hair? Okay? You know how old he was in his last year in the majors? Guess, how old? 48. He was 48 in his last year in the majors. Okay. What's the average age of any major league team? What's the average age of all the players on the team?
27.
What'd you say?
28.
28. Major League Baseball, the average roster is 20 years old. Okay, so that means when he was playing, he was 20 years older than the average age on the team. It means he was double the age of the 24-year-olds, more than double the age of the 22-year-olds on his team. Okay, now is he like Superman? Now you know what happens when you get old, and why athletes retire is because they get injured more often, they have more trouble recovering from injuries, they lose energy, they lose speed, they lose stamina, and strength. This is what happens. Okay, so did he lose those things? Yes, he did. So what saved his career? By the way, he won 121 games after the age of 40, which is like half of his wins came after age 40. He learned a special pitch called the knuckleball. Now the advantage of the knuckleball is you can throw it and still not have the full speed and strength that you do when you're young. It's a trick pitch, basically. And it does funny things. I mean, the thing flies through the air, and when it's through the batter, it like jumps around in odd directions. He had his own catcher, because catchers had trouble catching him. Euchre was his catcher, kind of the comedian, you know. Okay, so he said, he was asked how you catch a knuckleball, and what did he say? By the way, one trick they used to catch knuckleballs is the catcher would actually use a mitt that was twice as big as the usual one. It moved that much. Anyway, he said the way to catch a knuckleball is you wait till it stops rolling and then you pick it up. Always works. Okay, so what did he do? And this is a good example. I'm using this as an example for how we approach age. He did two things. One is he accepted that he was old and decrepit. Okay? And this is what we need to do as older people, is accept that our life has more losses than gains. That we're not going to get back what we've lost before. This is what we need to accept. As opposed to becoming bitter or envious or have self-pity, which comes naturally. Unless you accept, I have these losses, life isn't what it used to be. I've lost a lot, and I'll never gain those. But I accept that it's okay because I'm in winter. It's okay if I can't do what I used to do because I'm in winter now. It's okay if I don't have the energy to do what I used to do because I'm in winter now. It's okay because this is the season of life I'm in. I don't have to do things perfectly anymore, even though I'd like to and can't. And that's okay because I'm in winter now. This is accepting. And this is why it's so important to see life in seasons. I'm in a different season now. Okay, that's accepting. But the second thing is adapting to that. So he adapted by learning a new pitch that he didn't have when he was young. Okay, so we also need to adapt and learn to serve in different ways. Learn to love people in different ways. So we may be able to give less, but there's still things we can give. We may have less energy to serve with, but we still have certain things that we can do to serve. We may not go to Africa as a missionary, but we can encourage one who is. And so, if we're wise, we can use this season of life, find the opportunity that's embedded in those losses, and then be a blessing to other people, regardless of how limited we are. So what season are you in? Some seasons are more stressful than others, and the change of season is stressful. Even if it's a good change, there's still stress that comes in that. And that's why the Bible talks so much about peace. That God would give us peace in those transitional times, peace in those losses, and contentment that goes with that. So that the peace that passes all understanding to keep our hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. Jesus said, in the world you will have tribulation, but I've overcome the world. Peace I leave with you. My peace I give to you. Jesus came as Savior to redeem us from all kinds of losses, and then to rescue us and build us strength within us. And there's another aspect of that, and that is contentment, especially in the seasons in which you have lost, whether it's a long season or a short season. Especially in those times, we need contentment. Paul said, godliness with contentment is great gain. Having food and clothing, that's not much, but that's enough. Let's be content. But those who desire to be rich fall into temptation and a trap. I've learned to be content regardless of the circumstances. So if we're going through one of those sad seasons of life, of losses, whether it's a long season or a short season, you can find contentment in that if, first, you find the opportunities and the blessings that come with that. Because every loss has an opportunity built into that, if we find it and look for it. We'll find contentment if we learn to rejoice with others. Okay? Well, they might have something or gain something that we've lost. You can feel sad and self-pity about that, or you can celebrate with them and enjoy that with them. And that will build your contentment. We can thank God for those aspects of our life, of our season that are good. And then here's an important one, and that is to avoid envy. The problem with losses, especially when you're older, there's more losses, but anytime you have losses, the problem with losses is you always compare yourself to someone who has what you've lost. And so you might feel, I lost my husband or wife, and then be someone who has a husband or wife. And what are they doing? They're thinking, I've got my husband or wife, but I have no friends and no grandchildren. See, each of us has pains and pleasures, and part of getting towards contentment is not to fall into the trap of envy, to see the opportunities, the gains that we do have in every season, and not just to focus on what's not there. And then to encourage and to celebrate with other people and their pleasures. Well, Ecclesiastes ends with a hope and a promise. God's made everything beautiful in its time. I know that everything God does will endure forever. So God does things in and through us in every season of our life and through our whole lives. Gives us eternal life, but also abundant life now, and finds ways that we can serve God and love people. Okay, so right now outside it's July. What season of life are you in? A long season of summer, of fall, of winter, a short season, whatever it is. Whatever season you're in, recognize that season you're in. Recognize the gains that are hidden in the losses. Find the blessings in it. Look for the opportunities that you can do to continue to be a blessing to other people. And then as you do, you'll be making the most of every season and be able to benefit others and enjoy whatever season of